child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renardo could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renardo couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lapino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renardo felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renardo never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? Boy, if looks could kill. The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the lost god, and no one ever wanted the feathers. "Give me a lever," said Archimedes, "and I shall open a gate." Sky Ripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Sky Ripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core. Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. Somehow, he'd impulsively decided to stop being impulsive. Did that make any sense? You know, ore is pretty heavy to carry. You know what's not? A new sword. Yes, please. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry too. This was an unhealthy place to be. Oh look! Fracking. The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark art, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus. Maybe Lapino wasn't such a good friend. That made him feel better. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Well, of course, if you've just assembled a weapon out of legend that can exile gods from the world, you'd want to have a scientist or two look at it. And even if they disagreed and he had time, he could ask Calaveras himself. Yes, the observatory would be his objective. Why had the parts of the Sky Ripper only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had dismantled it? The mad Emperor Isengrim had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Was that why these ancient artifacts were rising out of the ground? How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction.
Once, he'd found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he'd broken. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series.
A legendary weapon was exactly what the rebellion needed. They were outnumbered. The once kind emperor had become a tyrant. But his ravens stayed loyal, for he fed them his victims, and the other animals were too frightened to rebel. Renato shuddered at what the emperor was trying to do. To bring back the lost gods, the Black Harvest, the Black Sun? No. He would stop that toad, no matter what the risk.
You couldn't go sticking jewels in your gauntlet just anywhere. What if you dropped one and broke it?
Renato was thrilled. The scientists seemed to think he'd put the Sky Ripper together right. But one toad was worried.
Yeah, the Sky Ripper could tear a hole in existence itself. There are invisible strings that tie the universe together. If the Sky Ripper cut one, the hole would widen and widen until our whole existence fell into it.
Another toad sighed. Irving still believes in string theory.
At least go see Calaveras.
Yeah, said the worried toad.
He knows more than anyone else has forgotten about the Transcendent Emperor.
If anyone could tell him how to use this weapon safely, it would be Calaveras. It was he who had told Renato how to find it in the first place. But maybe he had to give up on using it as a weapon. Maybe he had to go to the secret rebel base and ask the generals there what he could do with a weapon that he dared not use. Well, he should have known he'd have to consult Calaveras again. The scientists at the observatory were smart enough. But what did they know of the Transcendent Emperor? He hoped it wouldn't delay him too long. The rebels had scheduled the final battle soon. Every day they delayed risked the exposure of the secret base. And some soldiers were already drifting back to their homes and families. Calaveras would fix the Sky Ripper for him. And then he would win the final battle. Maybe it was the cold. But after a few steps, Renato's optimism started to slump. What if Calaveras couldn't help? Did Renato dare use the Sky Ripper? Oh, he hated that he had chosen this path. It was so much simpler to rescue friends and attack enemies. Even if some of those friends were more trouble than his enemies, some of those enemies had been friends before and might be into others out. Okay, it wasn't all that much simpler. Physics made his brain hurt. That, at least he was sure of. The platform used a hybrid propulsion system fueled by anti-gravity and wishful thinking. Tried to focus on the now. The ravens who seemed everywhere all the time. Where did they hatch from? Were there giant raven hatcheries somewhere, or did they have families? He didn't want to think about raven mummies raising their darling raven chicks. Calaveras would help. He would make Renato feel better about using the Sky Ripper. And then Renato wouldn't have to worry about ravens ever again. Said the lead raven.
were counting on Renato. He hoped Calaveras knew what he was doing. Calaveras had never let him down.
Yeah, of course I can make it work better.
But when Renato explained about the strings, Calaveras grew thoughtful.
Oh, strings, you say? Well, the Arcana do speak of the ties that bind the world.
He drew many intricate symbols in the dirt.
Yeah, so, according to my calculations, each time you fire, I'm afraid there's a 1 in 120 chance you'll destroy the universe.
That's pretty good odds. That's like rolling, 21 dice and they all come up 6. What are the odds of that?
What? No! It's more like 2.716s in a row.
Anyway, with those odds, it won't happen if I use it just once.
What? No. That's so not right. Each time you use it... Okay, look. Just don't use it ever. At all, okay?
All right, I guess. As he sailed away from the mountains, Renato could see clouds darkening. Rain? No. Ships. Imperial ships, swarming thick as bees. This was it. The big battle. They could not afford to lose this one. What if it did not go well? What if he had to use the Sky Ripper? Could he gamble the universe? On the other hand, what were the odds of rolling 21 sixes in a row? The battle was not going spectacularly well. What had the rebels been thinking? They'd been thinking he would bring the Sky Ripper, or the Iblis Stone, or that he'd sideline Zenobia somehow, or turn her. Couldn't he use the Sky Ripper just once? After all, if chances were 1 in 128, that meant he'd for sure be okay the first time. They'd get worse each time he used it, but the first time would be okay, right? He wasn't sure that it was right. So he didn't fire the Sky Ripper. He just brought it along, in case. There were stickers all over the platform for really hot lady foxes, with pictures and addresses and everything. Told him the odds didn't change just because you'd had a streak of good luck. His gut told him that was wrong, though. And he always listened to his gut. On the other hand, 128 chances to win. But one of them, he'd destroy the universe. That seemed a bit serious. Maybe he could defeat the Emperor without firing the Sky Ripper. Maybe he could bluff, but with a real weapon. Like in cards, when you had 3 knaves, but you pretended you had a fizbin. That could work. He set up the Sky Ripper and let it warm up. He would bluff if he had to. Zenobia came out, flanked by a very daunting platoon of ravens. "You won't actually use that," she said in that annoying, "I know everything because I'm a cat and you know nothing because you're just a fox" voice she had. "Oh, I know the odds." "Good, because there's a real chance you could destroy the universe." "No, not the first time I use it. The odds are too low." "What? No? Yeah, sure. The first time, the odds are practically nothing. They only go up if I use it a bunch more times." "No, but that's not how odds work. Didn't you pay attention in class?" "Now surrender, or I'll use it. Just once," he said. "Don't."
He felt sure the odds were with him. He had to go with his gut. That's what heroes do. "Fire," he said. "Please?" The Sky Ripper fired. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. It was awesome. And then he noticed
There was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger, and even larger. Crates fell upwards into it, and the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror, as it poured into the ravenous hole. 1 in 128. What are the odds? Thought Renato, and then everything fell into the hole and was gone.
he should go back to some of the choices he'd faced before. Maybe there were new paths that had opened up, like those doors he was opening up all over the map that took him to new treasures and around his enemies. But he'd learned another true thing. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly. His old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause, and maybe Renato could use that somehow. Renato couldn't quite put his paw on when he'd realized Lapino was working for the Empire. He'd never exactly seen Lapino sending coded messages to the palace, but he was sure. The rabbit had been on too many disastrous missions where he was the only survivor, or where he accidentally missed getting on the boat that went down to the abyss in flames. If Renato could prevent Lapino from getting back to the fleet with all the intelligence he'd probably gathered, it might be worth the trip. How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lapino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lapino from at least 2 lynch mobs. Felt that the rabbit resented him. Lapino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. But behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice? Nice. You couldn't hack this kind of firewall. You had to warm it up to you. Oh, you shouldn't have.
Ravens were landing everywhere from dropships. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, the rabbit would give the Empire all the intelligence he'd been stealing from the rebellion, and they'd probably give him a medal. He'd have to be very careful about how he played Lapino. At the slightest hint of danger, the mad rabbit would take off like a rabbit. Bloody and exhausted, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck. Now that he knew what the rabbit was, there were a few things about him that Renato didn't find so amusing anymore. You sent me an urgent message saying that you're in danger. Oh, I am. The Ravens are coming. Now, I've got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia. Renato wanted to clap shackles on the rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Renato was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky Ripper was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Isengrim III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it. Renato felt like a real hero, brave and smart. He told the rabbit all about the Sky Ripper's God's Eye core. "I'll go get the core while you attack Zenobia," he told the rabbit. "But wait, I've an even better idea. I'll get the core and you attack Zenobia," said the rabbit. "Right, yeah, that is better," agreed Renato. Perfect. The traitor would make sure the Emperor got the core. Now Renato just needed the Emperor to use the core. If he could only get something that the Emperor wanted very badly. Zenobia. He could save her and bait the Emperor at the same time. Right. Now, all Renato had to do was fight his way through Zenobia's invading troops, sneak onto her ship and into her bedroom, and kidnap her without any of her dozens of guards alerting her.
Then he would rely on her love for him to convince her how evil her father was, so she'd run away with him instead of going back to her father, who was going to blow himself up.
It did sound a little risky. But Renato had a feeling it would work out somehow. It always did.
Hey, wanna hook up?
With materials like this, he could probably make a really nice pair of barbecue tongs. Or even a sword.
People had laughed at the government workbench placement program, but you could see the benefits everywhere.
Anyone ever tell you you have a lovely eye? No? Renato was halfway to Zenobia's encampment when Lupino showed up. He was disheveled and distraught.
They jumped us. I barely got away. Oh, they got the core.
Oh, it was all going according to plan, thought Renato. Now he just needed Zenobia on his side. Yes, that was even better. The Iblis Stone. Zenobia could get it. And then the Emperor would have to pursue them. Wait. No. The gem would corrupt anyone. Even her. That's it, he thought. Even Lupino. Even though Lupino was already a traitor. It would turn him against his secret master, the Emperor. He would try to make himself Emperor. And the Emperor would have to defend himself with the core. Boom. He was a super genius. This is terrible, Renato told the rabbit. If only I had gone for the Iblis Stone. But now it's lost in enemy territory. He handed Lupino a map. It gives the bearer so much power. We can only hope the Emperor never finds it. What was that? Said Lupino. I think someone's following us. I didn't hear anything. Rabbit ears. You go on ahead. I'll check it out. And with that, Lupino hopped off with the map. Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. She was curled up on her bed. He'd forgotten how beautiful she was, how sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She was made of smoke, and he noticed he had a very solid blade to his throat. Did you really think you could capture me? Purred a familiar voice. I just wanted to chat, said Renato. Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? He needs a sacrifice, someone who truly loves him, to make a bargain with the lost gods. That's a vicious lie. He wants to bring them back. That's crazy. Why would anyone? They could make him immortal. An eater of souls. And with that, her eyes widened. She understood. Renato told her how he had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred, how he had slept in a burnt village. At midnight, the Emperor's victims had come to him in his dreams to tell him of the hideous eldritch rituals they'd been sacrificed in. He could still see those kittens and puppies, their wide, sad eyes, their moist noses. You can't prove that. I've got a witness at the observatory. He couldn't tell her, not yet, why he was really here. He didn't want her to be anywhere near the fleet when her father blew himself and Lupino up. So he told her about how the Emperor's obscene rituals had raised ancient artifacts out of the land. How he'd followed the appalling trail of the hideous horrors His Majesty had perpetrated for the sake of his own immortality. Any of this ring a bell? He said. He told me it was all lies. You've always known when I was lying. I always hated that about you, said Renato. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them.
behind, door number 2.
A word for a lot of ravens. Like a doofus of ravens? Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you join in? No! I'd destroy his books and I'd... Oh, God. Okay, you're not completely wrong. They've resurrected one of his victims. Well, look, it's not exactly alive, but it can talk. A true witness, she said. Wouldn't his gauntlet look swell with that jewel in it? Was a weapons engineer, Renato would make the cannonballs go much faster. And fire randomly, obviously.
A very clever engineer named Elon Muskrat got his start making floating platforms. Not many people knew that.
The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken special care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared at the carnage.
He didn't want me to hear the witness, did he?
I guess not.
What's your plan? She asked.
So, Renato explained his brilliant gambit. Sending Lapino to get the Iblastone, become super powerful and corrupted, provoke the Emperor into using the core against him, thus blowing up both of them, and hopefully the fleet too.
Let me visit your council, she said, shaken. I want to help. Could he really trust her?
Done it. He'd made Zenobia see how evil her father really was. He wished she didn't feel this urge to join in the rebellion. After all, he'd taken care of the Emperor, right? Yeah, but she'd always been conscientious like that. She told him she had to go somewhere first. So Renato gave her the location of the secret base, and they agreed to meet in the ruins. He had a very good feeling about this. What had Zenobia gone off to do? What was more important than meeting the rebel council? Had he made a mistake, sending her to the ruins? No. He knew they could trust each other. He could trust her because she never broke her word. And she could trust him because she could see right through him. Well, she'd probably be there well before him. She at least didn't have to fight her way through rainstorms of ravens.
Missed her. Not Zenobia. Hypatia, the kid's mother. Renato had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid type. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her.
As he came around the bend, there was Lapino, unconscious on the side of the path. And Renato could smell a familiar, sweet, smoky scent. Who? Zenobia. It had to be. She never used a combat spell when she could use drowsy gas. That meant she had the Iblastone. What would it do to her? She hated her father now. She'd kill him for sure. The council wouldn't mind if she killed the Emperor, but murdering her father would destroy her. He had to get to whatever ledge she was on and talk her down from it.
These things really slice like ham. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. He was on fire. So far, so good. his sword around at home. He guessed he was still compensating for that.
Everyone in the council chamber was dead. Zenobia stood shivering in the courtyard, drenched in blood. Why? He managed. They started arguing with me. I lost my temper and I wanted their blood. Well, not me. The stone did. Why did you take it from Lupino? I had a plan. You had a stupid plan, she said. I'm going to go kill my father now. No, you can't. You'll just take his place. You'll become worse than him. Get out of my way, or I'll kill you too. You won't kill me, he said. And I won't let you kill the Emperor. Enraged, she raised the sword. You hate him too? He could sense the Iblastone, yearning for his death. But she didn't strike. If you kill him, he'll destroy you. I know you. Shut up! She shouted, her sword trembling. I won't lose you again. Not for anything. Get away from me, he said, and he was very close. I can't lose you again. And he was in reach of her sword now. I hate him! I hate you too! I love you, he said for the very first time. And then she was weeping. He was holding her. The sword had dropped from her hand. He glanced at the Iblastone. It was no longer the black of the void. It looked like coal. No. It glowed. Like a cinder. It was crackling, burning, crumbling into ashes. You've always loved me, haven't you? She said. She was weak. The stone had taken so much from her. Always, he said. She staggered as he helped her up. Let me take you away. Where? The island of Avellone. The sisters will heal you. He'll follow us. Then we need the Farfarer, the fastest ship in the Empire. The Empire had seized his ship. They'd have to take it back. The port led right into the middle of the fleet. It was a glaring weakness in the defense. Zenobia was in no shape to fight. But he never fought so well. He wasn't fighting for money or loot or a cause. He was fighting for her. For them. His sword danced, his feet flew, and the ravens recoiled from his ferocity.
Oh, they really ought to put a railing on this thing, he thought.
And there it was. His beautiful skycraft, the Farfarer. They would fare very far indeed, beyond the Empire, beyond the reach of the Empire, to the mystical island of Avellone. He didn't know exactly where it was, but he knew he could find it. And they would find peace there. Second star on the right, and straight on till morning, laughed Zenobia. And they laughed together for the first time in a long time.
that hose.
But they did not go unnoticed. Scout ships lifted off, and the long lance of the Imperial flagship. Bernardo turned downwind to gain speed. The Raven ships could pursue, but they couldn't close. The Farspeaker croaked,
Return her and live!
"Go sacrifice yourself," yelled Bernardo.
Then you won't have her either.
On the flagship, the Emperor was readying some arcane weapon. It couldn't be. It was the core. A devastating beam lanced out of the flagship. Bernardo zigzagged wildly to keep the Farfare out of it. Now the Raven scout ships were closing the distance, and the beam was getting closer too. Then came a blinding flash, and the air was searingly hot all around him. There was a thunderous, deafening roar. He could smell burnt oak and burnt feathers and burnt flesh. But when he could hear and see again, they were alive and unhurt. And they were alone in the sky. Zenobia embraced him. They had done it. Through luck and through love, they had won the war. "Avellone, here we come," he said as he held her arms wide in the prow of the boat and let her feel its speed. "Maybe the real Avellone is wherever we're together," she said. And so, after a bit of an argument, Bernardo and Zenobia went to one of the two Avellones. The one shrouded in mists, or the one in their hearts. But which one they went to, I'll never tell. He'd done it. He'd forged his own destiny. Well, he hadn't actually done it.
but he knew what he would do. Renato smiled at the book. He practically wanted to kiss it. The kid's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. He'd saved the book and saved the world. Renato owed him and his mother so much. Renato lowered the mainsail and let the Farfarer shoot forward in the breeze. Second star to the right, and straight on till morning. This time, he would win.